Hi, I'm Sam Fessich from the EduMagic Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. I am so excited to be here with you all on this wonderful Monday. Hopefully, you all had a great work day, or if you were off today, I hope that you were able to just, get some rest, reconnect, and just, enjoy yourselves for today. But I am excited to be here with you today as we've got an amazing guest that I cannot wait for you all to meet. But before we get to that, I just simply want to say thank you all, as always, from the bottom of my heart for all of your support. Thank you so much for all the likes, shares, and follows. And thank you, as always, just for your support because it makes me so happy that you guys are all finding some great value in our show and also in our amazing guests. And today is no different. As always, we try and bring you some amazing educators, amazing creators, and just that have some amazing stories. And I'm just really excited about today's guest. So today I want to welcome to the show Dr. Zachary. Zachary, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great. This is exciting.
Awesome, Zachary. Thank you so much for joining us today. And most importantly, too, thank you so much for reaching out too,
Sure.
on LinkedIn and everything. That's how we make this connection. And you told me a little bit about your story, what you'd love to talk about. And I said,
Sure.
absolutely. That is what my EdTech life is all about, giving everybody a platform where they can come and share their experiences and journeys. So before we get started, Zachary, as you know, I know you're familiar with the show, but everybody that comes on the show is like a superhero. And as we know, superheroes have an origin story. So, Zachary, if you can go ahead and share with us a little bit about your origin story.
This is great for an introduction. Sure. Um, I was born in Colorado, 1987, and we moved throughout the United States. My mother's in healthcare, and so moved to everywhere. From Texas to Iowa, of course, which is where I'm at now. And then I went to school and graduated in 2006 for high school, and then I most recently graduated with my doctorate in 2021. So a lot of activity in between that time, a lot of things that I enjoy doing. Definitely a strong reader, of course, but just love being with family. And I have a furry cat, Oliver Jones, who keeps me busy. So a lot of good stuff.
Excellent. Well,
Yes,
thank you so much, Zachary, for
you
sharing a bit
bet.
of that. And so let me ask you, because I am from Texas, what part of Texas did you reside in?
San Angelo.
Oh, okay.
Where that is, I forgot. But yeah, San Angelo. Yes.
Yes, yes.
We
No, I
were
am
only
very familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah, we were only there for a year, so it was kind of a quick deal. So yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right. So Zachary, tell me a little bit about, the current work that you are doing now. I know you just said you finished your doctorate, but
Mhm.
I was like I told you earlier in the pre-chat, looking at your information, your bio information, and of course your LinkedIn profile, I'm like, wow, you are just amazed. I was amazed by all the amount of work that you have done and the work that you continue to do, and just even sharing in the pre-chat, what you were involved in. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
where do you find the time? So share a little bit with our audience
Sure.
what it is that you're currently working in.
Yeah, so I always like to say my day job because I have so many, but by day, I'm the director of children's services at Erickson Public Library in Boone, Iowa. So I run an entire department dedicated to infant to, I would say, about fifth grade. I work with an amazing team there. And then I most recently became a consultant at the Space Science Institute, which is based in Colorado. Do as an independent consultant working on a research project right now on quality of life. And then I teach part-time at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, in the School of Library and Information Science. So I'm adjunct there. And then in 2011, after my first master's, I opened up my own small business to work with librarians and educators on just a variety of projects. So that's my career thus far. We'll
Wow.
see how much more. Yeah.
That is amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that. So, Zachary, we talked a little bit about pre-chat, and you when you reached out, we understand. Like I said, this platform is to share, and amplify stories. And what we're talking about, as people have seen here, the title of the episode today is "A Seat at the Table." So this is
Yeah.
something that we're going to be talking about as far as our chat today. So if you could just share a little bit with us that
Mhm.
context of what you mean by, you know, finding a seat at that table.
Yeah, it also really connects well with what I do with children. One of the things that I'm a believer in is our stories and telling our stories. Um, so when I was thinking about a title for this, I was thinking about how difficult sometimes it has been for me in having a learning disability, feeling like I have a seat at the table, thinking about amplifying our voices, thinking about advocacy, and just those struggles and why students, especially with a disability, need to have a seat at the table and deserve to have a seat at the table and to be heard and listened to.
Excellent. So, Zachary, if you don't mind, if you can share a little bit about your experience, maybe through grade school through 12, and, maybe even also in higher ed, talking about, needing some additional supports and finding your way to that seat at the table. What was your experience like?
Well, I think it's important for me to first give accolades to both my parents, Doug and Mickey, because um, they taught my brother and I early on to advocate strongly, early on in our education. My mother, especially, is dyslexic. So she herself kind of definitely has a strong story of having a disability and knowing those struggles. So I want to say thank you to them. But it really started off kind of frustrating, I would say around sixth grade, when I knew in my heart that I was placed in special education because of what the requirements at the state I was in, what the requirements were for students to be put in special ed. Wonderful services, wonderful educators who were there to support, but something internally made me think, I just don't know if I'm supposed to be here. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. However, struggles began for me, and especially test taking. I'm not a good test taker at all, and it became very difficult when reading scores began to dip, and so I was able to read and comprehend things like Shakespeare in sixth grade, but because of a test score, I was given a second grade reading book, and that really impacted my self acceptance of myself, self understanding. I felt words like stupid or words like misunderstood. I wasn't getting through to the system where I was trying to say there are other ways that I can learn besides this way that will get us to where we need to go. So I kept going into special ed and year after year. And it was not until summer before I went into, I would say, eighth grade, where I was in driver's education. And we all know that everybody has to drive the same. There's no accommodations, no way we can modify that test because we all have requirements by law. So I went into it without any accommodations and I passed, and a light bulb just went off. And even though I got a 77, 78, I was like, see, there's a way that I can learn. So that year, when I went to school, I was determined to graduate out of special education. And I did. I graduated out, which can be very tricky to do. Um, but we created a plan, followed the plan, was very excited about this. And then nobody kind of told me geometry was coming. And I have a visual spatial impairment, which kind of means that on a piece of paper, I can't see 3D. But if I walk around an object, I'll understand that concept. So unfortunately, I failed geometry. And it was rather difficult because the advocacy came out where I said, if you just let me do it this way, I guarantee I'll understand it. Unfortunately, it wasn't the case. And so I just accepted that. But I got really depressed in my 10th, 10th grade, 11th grade. I would say that was the first time that suicide came in my head because I was just so frustrated why I wasn't either being accepted or being seen the way I wanted to be seen. My folks were still there. We advocated strongly. As I approached the end of high school, you have your final, what are called IEP meetings, the educational plan, individualized educational plan. And we talked about college, and my ACT scores were they're just not there. And it was suggested that, maybe there's another alternative besides college. Well, I'm a person that I'll determine for myself what I will or can't do. So I was determined and I graduated. I started college 2 weeks after high school, and I knew that I had to either make it or not. I didn't know. But when I visited with their services for accommodations, and I had to get retested, which is difficult when you're a college student and they don't help pay for that. So you're paying money out for a psychologist, at least in my experience. That's when I got diagnosed with twice exceptional, which is unique because if you go to the National Association for Gifted Children, twice exception are children that have gifts and are gifted, but they also have a documented disability of some sort. So that would be me. And what was amazing after that is I was able to apply skills of creativity and storytelling, continue my advocacy, but I'm not going to say it was easy. There were a lot of dips in my early years in college where the academics were just challenging as they should be. But something happened in my doctorate towards the end at the dissertation level. I was in a parking lot and I had an amazing dissertation staff member, and we had great conversation. And then my advisor and I had a conversation. Just writing is something that I'm challenged by, not because I can't write, but it takes me some time. I'm also have some dyslexia, so sometimes words are missing. So there's a whole kind of game I have to play. I didn't know if I was going to make it because even though I was advocating for, let's see if we can do it differently, I needed to do it what was required out of me. So hired my own editors. We figured it out. I graduated. And I make it sound like it was quick and easy these last 15 or so years, but definitely a challenge throughout, especially in having this label or this diagnosis. It continues to be a challenge daily. So thank you for letting me share all of that.
Yeah, and Zachary, I want to just kind of go back a little bit more into the K-12 space, and then we'll talk a little bit more too, because I definitely have some questions because I'm learning so much from you. Excuse me, and I know that many of our audience members also will be learning a lot. But
Sure.
I wanted to ask because I myself, when you said, the kind of spatial reasoning and visualization, that too was something that happened with me in high school where, I did have some trouble in geometry and so on. But one thing that I love that you advocated for yourself.
Mhm.
You understood, you knew that. And currently, right now, there's probably a lot of students that have gone through the education system who have not had the opportunity to advocate. And just something so simple that a teacher could have done, which is,
Mhm.
sharing, figuring out a math problem instead of doing it this way. Hey, maybe here's another option or a different option. And I love the way that you said, you know what? I may not know how to do it that way.
Yeah.
However, if you let me do it this way, I know that I can do that.
Mhm.
And kind of what I see sometimes is that teachers are just very hesitant and just say, no, this is the way it's always been done. This is the way I'm going to continue to do things. And we see students that may not be successful because they weren't given an opportunity to do
Mhm.
the problem a different way or see it in a different way. So, if you can tell us a little bit about more about that experience in
Sure.
the elementary space or
Yeah.
elementary, K-12
Sure.
space.
Well, first off, I wanted to shout out to all teachers and educators. They do an amazing job, right? I mean, really great work. And so I'm going to frame this as our system right now.
Mhm.
How our system is. We need to do some work on our system in terms of advocacy and giving children and youth opportunities to speak up and to be okay with that. I think that's something that is needed in our system of education more. And you had reflected on my experience, especially with geometry. The struggle came when the system had it. This is how we do things. This is, and it can create, for some who accept that, a block, or they will be yielded, especially as become adults. Because part of it, I think, being an adult is strategizing other solutions sometimes or other conclusions, finding our own pathway. And when we talk about like mathematics, for example, obviously, I mean, there are some creative ways to solve things, and we can use multisensory learning. Um, I mean, you know, this is kind of a funny story. Like right now, I'm trying to redo some flooring in my bathroom, and it came up where I'm like, okay, I gotta go back and think about, gotta measure this, but I can't visually see it. Well, then I did some research on applications that can assist with that. That doesn't mean that I'm cheating. Doesn't mean a child would be cheating. It's just they found a solution or their parents are working on a solution. And yes, it's important to show our steps, but part of the steps can go differently, where my 1, 2, 3 could be your 4, 5, 6, like I think not being careful not to restrict is important, but definitely advocacy. I think a lot of times we want to assume that we want to assume that this is the best way. And it's important that we, as adults, advocate for our children. Absolutely. But taking the time to listen and say, hey, mom, dad, teacher, this is just not, it's not working for me. But here's another way to do that. I think we will go far, much further if we do more of that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that, kind of like going back to the theme of a seat at the table, it's everybody needs that seat. You need the student, you need the parents, and of course, the administrators all there sitting at that table to help, implement these individualized plans to help students be very successful and to make sure that they are followed through because that's what we want. We always want the best for our students
Sure.
and forming and building that relationship, that
Yeah.
connection with the school. It's not to seem negative. I know sometimes, you know teachers or our system may see like parents like as oh, maybe a little overwhelmed when they come
Mhm.
in and their reactions and so on. But in the end, we always know parents are going to want the best for their students. We
Right.
know that educators want the best for their students, but we just need to, like you said, communicate openly.
I think communication, it builds that relationship. We're understanding that all of us come into something with experience, good or bad. We're walking through this journey. I'm also a proponent of looking at more of an ecological system and seeing those relationships within systems, within environments, and knowing that children are part of that. That sometimes when we really do need to think about the center core of this. And you brought up the IEP. It's an individualized education plan. Well, who are we talking about? We're talking about the student. And sometimes you're like, where is the student at? Or maybe the student is at the table, but they're just listening. And listening is important. How do we work and help them advocate? Sometimes asking the questions, especially as they continue to grow and the more the youth, young adult, as they get ready for college. And let me just say this, I also have an individual in my life who didn't go to college and was successful. Every one of us has skills and abilities, and how we use those and how we contribute to the world is an important question, observation. It's something we have to think about. So I'm a proponent for education. I'm a proponent for higher education. But let's just know that all of us have different ways to contribute as well.
Excellent. I love that, Zachary. Thank you so much for
Sure.
sharing that experience. And now, like you said, as you moved on now into higher ed, you started doing college. And then, of course, you said now, while feeling those effects, how the system now, you have to pay out of pocket. What
Mhm.
would you say somebody that has had your experience, and what you've gone through, what could you say that could be improved in the higher ed space?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great, again, I want to be sure I stress that this has been my experience. Others may have had more financial um, opportunity or their institution. But based on my experience, especially after graduating high school, that transition to college, it's really difficult depending on if you're going to a college, like if you're staying in the state that you just graduated in and going to a state or community college or private college in that state, what those communication, systems are like. I know sometimes those counselors do work with those institutions, but there needs to be better communication on students, A, being able to say, "Hey, I received accommodations. Where do I go with for those?" B, the assessment of those. If the IEP at the end of high school, says X, Y, and Z, it was a challenge to go to an educational psychologist and to get retested. Fully respect the institution and why they had to do that, but the financial means for that was pretty hefty, especially for a young college student, let alone somebody who was just entering more into their career and financially kind of, strapped for cash, if you would say. Um, I think that if there's ways, if the institutions have more of those resources or abilities on site that would be helpful, or contractual opportunities with a local educational psychologist might be helpful. Excuse me. But I also think what's important, taking all that out, just having more of a space of um, connection and communication, right? And it just, identity is identity. This is not full 100% of my identity is not this, but it's a significant part. And there is, sorry, in my experience and how what I face, sometimes a sense of shame. Why are you in college if you can't understand the basics of grammar, for example? How did you make it this far? Those are my thoughts, and I still have those thoughts, and that comes with shame, and it's horrible. So how can we provide a safe space for connection? I have a learning disability, but there's a whole slew. And let me just say that the word disability, I'm okay saying that. I am okay saying that because I have abilities, 100%. These are just areas that I have to work through, but I'm proud of those areas as well. So I think self understanding is important too. So those would be some of my areas for higher ed to work on as well.
Excellent. Yeah, and those are great points, Zachary. Thank you so
Sure.
much for sharing
Yeah,
that and that
you bet.
experience as well. So now coming back now, you said you've got your master's, you've got your doctorate, and you're now working and you're doing quite a lot. You're heavily involved. And of course, again, going back to the center of the conversation, which is the seat at the table. And we're kind of seeing, as the conversation's going, what we're really talking about and where you're sharing your experience. So even so now, how do you feel? You just received your doctorate in 2021, doctoral studies, you had master's doctoral studies, the work that you've put in. Um, do you feel currently right now that having that has given you or afforded you the ability to kind of start getting closer to the table and getting a seat at that table? Or do you
Sure.
feel still that that seat at the table is still a little bit distant?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for me to say that I've always felt that I've had a seat at the table. Whether I was welcomed is a different story. Um, Receiving my doctorate was an amazing milestone in my life. Uh-oh. Might start crying about world. Um, I'll pause here for a second. It was an amazing milestone in my life, but just the sacrifice that, especially with somebody with a disability, it was tough. It still is. I still have this. I like, it's called imposter syndrome, right? Where you're like, oh, they're going to find out that I'm a fake. That's how I feel sometimes. And that's all because of some of the strong struggles of being told that I wasn't good enough or I wasn't smart enough or I shouldn't be here. That's what I mean by I have a seat, but I have to sometimes fight to feel welcomed at the table. I will say getting this far and receiving this milestone moment affords me the opportunity to do something like this and to share my story. And but I always like to also say that I went to a community college, Des Moines Area Community College, and they saved part of my life and reaffirming that I am intelligent, that I have worth and value. And I actually sometimes see that those 2 degrees that I received there at a different level than even my doctorate. And because we have to start somewhere. But yeah, it's a daily struggle sometimes. Currently writing a book with my friend and co-author Tom Rendon on creativity. But the process of writing kind of puts me back in that weird seat. Not that I'm not able to write, but it doesn't come easy to me sometimes. And overthinking and procrastination only because I'm a perfectionist and then doubting myself and my abilities. It's a whole thing. And I think it's important to especially when we work in teams, to share that, to say, hey, look, this is why I'm struggling. It's not the content. It's not this. It's because this is where I'm at. This is how I learn. And so we're working through those strategies there too. So I finally got to your answer. I hope that's okay that I took that long.
No,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you so much, Zachary. And I love one thing that you said, it's just it's where you're at. And again, the way we process the learning. And I myself really, in listening to you speak, I was like, oh yeah, I do the procrastination. I'm one of those, that always waits, to the last minute. And I had a friend of mine who coined a term and I had heard it for the first time, which is dopamining. And because he said that it's the same thing, he waits till last week for that adrenaline rush, but also because it's like a perfectionist. You want to make sure that it comes out great and so on. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, and what I'm learning and what I love today that you're sharing in the conversation and that you mentioned so well is that, hey, it's not that I don't know the content. It's, hey, we learn different. I process things differently. And boy, just to share your message there and to have the ability to have students feel comfortable enough and have psychological safety within their classroom setting to say, hey, I get it, but let me try it different in a different way to be able to do the self advocacy.
Yeah.
That's something that's great.
Well, and I'll add this, there is something to be said about being confrontational or aggressive, or I guess if the word pompous, I don't know. Uh, I'm not saying, obviously like demanding your seat and walking in and creating an argument. It's more of just taking a seat, and then people can either ask questions as to why or let it go. But making sure that you're listening and making sure that you're advocating when you need to advocate, it really is an important thing from a social emotional standpoint. And it really, the other connection is to my teaching at the university level. I teach an amazing course on early literacy. That's really not teaching for me. It's just a passion and joy. And the beautiful part about a class like that is that we can tell our stories, and there's multi ways that students can uh, agree with me on how they understand the content and demonstrate the content. So the experiences that I've had are, I hope, helping the students that I'm working with as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. And especially the storytelling component.
Yeah.
I am huge on that. I that and one of the reasons that I love this show and it kind of turned into this, what you're doing today is really, the mission of the show to amplify stories, amplify because we learn from them and we see the different learning, we see the different experiences, we see people's journeys and there's always something there that we can all take and sprinkle on into what we're already doing and relate to and make that connection and that's the whole point, and I absolutely love that. So thank you so much for sharing
Yeah,
that and that you're
absolutely.
passionate about it.
Very passionate. And I will also add this, investment in education, I understand needs to be focused on curriculum and like the trends, but investment in education has to first be the person, right? And the student. That has to be the focus. And connecting with our students, connecting with the family has to be where investments start. That's where we really need to think about. And then we can use that and then sprinkle in all the other important needs. But if we're forgetting to connect and understand identities and understand who students are and where they're coming from, understanding their traditions, their cultures, all of that, we're not doing that. The system is not doing that. Then we really need to slow down and really re-energize and refocus that. So I just wanted to add that piece.
Love that. Love that. Well said. Well said. So, Zachary, now in your experience, like you said, now you are teaching college level courses. How has your experience that you've lived, have helped you to be that great professor that you are?
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So first off, that the school that I work for is just amazing. They have an amazing faculty of support. When I first started there, because I'm coming out of college, right? I'm coming from a student where I'm always calling them at my university like professor or doctorate. This is the first time where I can have my students, if I'm okay with it, call me Zach. And I love that, not because I don't want, it's good to be respected for your work, but it's a level playing field where we can have this different level of connection sometimes. Um, but being a part-time adjunct lecturer, um, even it has afforded me the opportunity to really invest in students. I take a lot of time sometimes to for students who need more time to speak to me or want to meet before or after class. that's what this school, this at this university, they really stress that importance, and all faculty spend the time that they need to connect with students. It just helps because we're not necessarily always focusing on content. It's like, how are you doing? Where are you at? All of those different factors. And then we, of course, talk about the content, but definitely has afforded me opportunity to make sure I'm connecting and spending that time to do that.
Man, that is great. That's so exciting, and that's something that I look forward to someday too, as well, to be in your seat as we talked about, my journey as well, and getting a little bit closer to start writing like the wind and,
Yeah,
hopefully take that next step. All
yeah,
right. So Zachary, like if I may ask too, I kind of want to, and, maybe dive in a little bit into, you made a comment that you're currently working on a book, you and another
sure.
co-author. Can you share a little bit more about what that book is gonna be about?
Yeah, I sure can. So our book, centers on creativity, and we like to call them secrets, but they're really not secrets of creativity. We are beginning to understand more and more that creativity is definitely multifaceted. There's so many different layers of creativity, from the neurological lens, from the biological lens, from the sociological lens. But it's not going to be this academic jargon, if you will, of about creativity. A lot of respected research, and we are combing through that. But we are targeting early childhood professionals and care providers, and providing some implementation on areas of creativity within their practice. What's really neat about this co-authorship is Tom Rendon. He's got a strong, long background in early childhood, and I have a strong, almost getting there, law background in library science or librarianship. So that's informal learning environment on my end. And then he's got the formal learning environment. And how can we make that bridge? We talk about the ecosystem piece. Do definitely bring up Brenner a lot in our book on his bioecological model and looking at those different layers of ecology and the systems and those connections. So we're still working. It's, you know, work in progress, but hopefully we'll be out relatively soon. So
Oh, but I love that. I'm so excited as I'm a big proponent of amplifying creativity and just creation altogether and allowing students to create in the classroom. And so I'm
sure,
really excited about this project that you're going to get to do. And like you said, just bridging that gap between kind of like the formal and informal and just
sure.
bringing it to the education landscape. So that's wonderful.
You bet.
Excellent. Well, Zachary, it's just been an amazing, amazing conversation. But before we get into our last segment, which is my favorite three questions to end the show with, I just wanted to open up the floor to you. If there's anything else that you would like to share, with our audience members, feel free to do so at this
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I first off, thank you for this opportunity. It's part of my life mission, if you will, to kind of sprinkle my experience to bring whatever my experience can bring out to assist somebody. So I appreciate that. And I think that what I will leave listeners with is uh, know that students should be at the table and can be at the table and need to be listened to, that we need to teach them the skills of advocacy so that they're able to stand firm and strong and who they are and how they learn. It will just go far. And I want to also say this, even though I've had these struggles and I've had really difficult comments, these experiences, talked about briefly the suicide attempt, it's really has molded me to be where I'm at today. And so I'm grateful that I've been able to persevere in that way and really appreciate those that I work with and those who have mentored me and guided me continue to do that. So that those are my last few statements.
Excellent. Zachary, thank you so much. That was so well put.
Sure.
And I'm so thankful that I had the opportunity to speak with you today. That I'm so thankful that you reached out and
Sure.
we made this show happen. And just for you to, I get to be here with you today. I'm so thankful for this moment because today I learned so much from you. And I am just so thankful for the work that you continue to do and the experience that you had in sharing that out. It's definitely something beneficial
Sure.
for everybody that will listen to this show. And hopefully, we'll definitely make that happen. And
Yeah.
millions of people listen to this and get to know who you are because you definitely have a great voice and a great message. And I'm just really excited to see what the future is going to bring. And
Sure.
like I said, I want to leave this as an open invite too, that whenever you're done with your book, you're more than welcome to reach out to me and say, hey,
Man,
we're done with this and we want to share it with the world.
great.
You have an open platform here, my friends. I'm really
Oh,
excited for that.
wonderful. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Absolutely. All right, Zachary. Well, here we go. This is the last segment of the show where we end with the following three questions. So, question number one is, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
Okay, one question. Can you remind me, like, am I with kryptonite? Is it something that I find needs to be approved? Is that what you're asking?
Oh, something that weakens you, I guess, or makes you
Okay.
feel like, when you hear
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely will have to be censorship. I am not a fan of censorship of books. Not a censorship over material, especially history. Things have happened. We need to learn about it. And I go back to saying every one of us has experiences. We're all different. All of us have different culture, different traits, different, beliefs. We need to treasure those. We need to invest in those. So I get weakened knowing that there are policies and or laws being discussed or have been passed where will cause significant harm, especially in the area of censorship.
All
So
right. Good answer, Zachary. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right.
sure.
Question number two is, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
I think the first thing that just came to my head is a saying that I always say is, which is "Go big or go home." And I say that, and I know that's kind of odd. I mean, there's more things that I could say, but what I mean by when I say that to many people is we have to try. We have to do something. We have to take our first step, and sometimes taking that big leap, if you will. If we don't do that, then what's the point? We have to sometimes settle with our fear and knowing, yeah, taking a big step is going to be hard, but we got to do that. So I would say go big or go home.
Excellent. Great answer. Great motivation there for sure. And
Sure.
so, great message. All right. And Zachary, last question. Let's say that this was your podcast today and I was your guest. What would be one question you'd like to ask me?
Yeah, that's a really good question. To you, how important um, is uh, social emotional well being as part of your daily practice as a teacher, or do you practice that?
Yes, no, absolutely. It's something that is very important from the get go, just in even in the evening, winding down after all of this is shut down, just spending that time with my wife, just both of us like decompressing and just talking about our day, being able to just have that open communication, planning what's going on the next day or the next couple of days, but waking up refreshed, waking up in prayer, and just really going out and doing the best that we can. But also, I did have some issues or kind of learning a little bit about, like, we talked a little bit about pre-chat, was setting those boundaries, and
Mhm.
boundaries are definitely something that is very important. So definitely social emotional well-being in my day-to-day is something that is very important, and just really trying not to take on maybe sometimes, problems that don't affect me directly, but that I know that I can advocate for. But if they don't affect me directly, I'm not going to carry somebody else's, burden many times
Mhm.
because that can really drain you many times. So just picking and choosing who I surround myself with also helps a lot, definitely. So that's very
I'm
important.
I wanted to point out what I love about your answer is that you also included yourself, right? Because a lot of times when I speak to other practitioners, immediately as who we serve, which is important, but it's very important that we focus on our own SEL as well. So thank you for that.
Yes, you're very welcome, Zachary. And thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being such an
Yeah.
amazing guest. I am so happy that we got to make this show happen. And, I won't be surprised, Zachary, if we have a lot of my friends and colleagues that'll reach out to you too as well to
Oh,
have you on their show because you are
yeah.
definitely an amazing and worthy guest. Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
your story here.
Thank
And
you.
to Yes, of course. And to everybody that joined us today, I know we did see some people in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. For those of you that are watching live or that are going to catch this on the replay, thank you so much, as always, from the bottom of my heart for making my EdTech life what it is today. Please make sure that you stop by our website at myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 165 amazing episodes to learn from teachers and creators and just really hear their stories. So, thank you always from the bottom of my heart for your support. And if you'd like to contribute to our mission, please stop by our store where you can go ahead and get yourself some My EdTech Life gear. We've got some caps, we've got some sweaters. We know that conference season is around the corner, so we definitely want you maybe sporting some My EdTech Life gear. That would be great. So please head on over and contribute to our mission of connecting educators and creators one show at a time. So, as always, my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techie.